This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for How to Super Age with Elise Collins. And Elise, it's been a couple of weeks or more. Summer has just gone by so quickly, and it seems like we've all had so many other things to do. But we know that the podcast is important because every day we're aging just a little bit. But if we can do it in a super way, how magnificent can that be? So welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I just wanted to put up my book. I can't believe that time is going by so quickly. My new edition of Chakra Tonics came out in July, mid-July, and it's great if you've ever struggled with not wanting to take pills, but wanting to get good nutrition. And I know our guest knows a lot about this, especially plant-based foods where we can get so much. Some of the drinks in here are teas and tonics. They don't necessarily have the fiber, but you can always put fruits and vegetables into a blender if you're struggling with getting enough fruits and vegetables. And this book gives you things to think about, it's a companion guide to the chakras. So it's a fun way to look at the mind-body connection, which we are going to speak about today with our guest, who I'm going to introduce now. And we'll have the links to Chakra Tonics in the show notes. And if you didn't see the cover, I'll say Chakra Tonics. My book is Chakra Tonics, Essential Elixirs for the Mind, Body, and Spirit. Today's guest is Dr. Ernest Johnson. He is a former professor of family medicine and behavioral medicine. He's a researcher, published author of books, and peer-reviewed scientific papers about the role of emotions in health problems. Ooh, love that. His mantra is meditation, transcendental meditation in particular, is the key to health, happiness, and fulfillment. And that's definitely, if not the biggest part of super aging, but the key to super aging, because if we're not having our health, happiness, and fulfillment, why are we here? That's not in his bio, but I'm just saying. And he also loves to shop for meals in his garden, in his backyard organic garden. And if you're watching on the video, he's pointing.
Yeah.
So garden is to the right. And I hope he'll tell us a little bit about what he grows there, because I know I've met Dr. Ernest on Clubhouse, and he talks a lot about his garden. And gardens, as you know, I love to talk about gardens. They're a great metaphor for so many things in life. So thank you and welcome, Dr. Ernest. Is there anything you want to tell us about yourself that isn't in the bio before we go to questions?
Oh, listen, let's just have some fun during this time. Okay. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you, and let's go on. We'll discover more about me as we go. Okay.
Okay. Well, what I know about you is you have this depth and this when I'm around you or hear your voice, because I haven't ever been physically around you, but when I hear your voice, I just want to drop in. So I know for the podcast, we don't want people to fall asleep, especially if you're driving and listening, but that feeling of dropping in and going deeper is so profound with you. Your presence and your wisdom just shines through when you speak. So how did you get into this role of emotions and health? What got you started on that path?
Well, this thing about psychology, was not something in my agenda in college. I went to college thinking I would become a marine biologist. Somehow figured out a way to get a scholarship for this. So I was into my beginning of my second year, and there were two students from my hometown who were also there in attending college, Donna and David. And, we spent a lot of time on the beach, walking, talking. Back in those days, the beach was a nice, serene, quiet place. We didn't have those condominiums all over the place. We had the beach to ourselves and just talk about life. So there I was there in that second semester where we were on quarters, but this was in my second year. And Donna saw me in the middle of the campus and said, I had the course that's got your name all over it. And she said, psychology. And I said, no, this doesn't have my name on it. And she says, you're kind of like Bob Newhart. I said, Bob Newhart? She said, yeah. And I thought about Bob Newhart. She says, yeah, he's that psychologist on that TV program. I said, I'm nothing like Bob Newhart. She says, but we would always go walking and talking, and you're talking about life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. And she says, yeah. So the next quarter, I said, I'll take this course. And there were literally 4,000 or 5,000 people in the course. And the only seat available was second row, dead center. There he was, looking over at him. And he was talking about the little white rat and doing whatever he was doing. And he had a question, and somebody, got an answer to it, and he gave them a hard time. Another student had a question, and he gave them hell. Okay, all right, so wait a minute. Maybe I'm in the wrong place. I'll try it one more time. And we were doing the class again. And this particular time, in the dead middle of the row there I was, and I had a question. And I said, there is no way I'm going to ask this man a question and stand up and be embarrassed in front of 500 people. And I thought, if everybody's in class now, then I could go to that office and drop the class. So there I was. I've got to ask 50 people, watch your feet. I don't want to step over your feet. I'm going out of here now. And I'm almost at the door. And there's that looming voice that said, you're just going to get out of here and walk out of my class like this? And there was deep silence everywhere, except for me saying, ma'am, I don't want to understand. I'm leaving. And I heard him. I could hear him. And I got to the end, and I turned around and I said, and I'm going to tell you why I'm leaving. And I said, I thought psychology people were supposed to be kind to people and to listen to people and to guide them, do whatever. You're me. And I closed the door, and there was an applause from the class. Unfortunately, when I got over to that office, it's too late in the season to drop the class. So what am I going to do? Well, I get to the class real early now, and I'm way in the back. I'm a Black man. Out of 500 people, there's probably 4 Black people in the class. So what happens, long story short, there are these laboratory classes now, smaller units with the graduate students. And I'm there with the graduate student. We're trying to condition a rat to press a little lever. And guess who walks in? The professor. And he looks at me, he said, are you in my class? And I said, yes, sir, but I'm way in the back. as if, I've got my race blinders on in those days, if you know what I mean. And he goes, well, okay, all right. He says, I think I've seen you in my class. I said nothing. And I took the class, but eventually fell in love with it. I had no more money in my scholarships to take on additional courses in the next few semesters. But I took classes with him, and as if I was enrolled, and did really well. I fell in love with it. And because he was a biologically minded psychologist, he talked a lot about what the brain does to the body. And so that was my introduction to this fit between the brain and the body. Well, as I stayed there and graduated and stayed with the same university to go to graduate school, which wasn't part of my dreams. As I left graduate school and got into my career, I had the opportunity to be a national speaker for the National Scientific Organization, Society, National Scientific Society. And one of my first invitations, I was living in Ann Arbor at that time. I was just going to be there for that one year. But by then, my medical school director has given me an opportunity that wasn't on my agenda, to have a job in a medical center. But one of my first opportunities to go give a talk about science was back home in Tampa. And my professor, who was a dear friend, kind of like a second father to me, I said, "Did you arrange this invitation?" He said, "No, this was Dr. Kimmel." I said, "Dr. Kimmel?" He says, "The man that you cussed out when you were undergraduate, and that you took courses with him as if, you know what I mean?" He told the whole story. He said, "That man developed a respect for you the first time you stood up and opened your mouth." And I'm telling you, that's the way it got going on. So for me, it was making the most out of something that didn't exist at the time. There wasn't this fit between psychology and medicine and the mind and the body. Courses for the mind were on one side of the campus. Courses of studies about the body were on the complete opposite. There wasn't a middle place at all. So that's how I came into this thing. And I was going to get my little doctorate degree and go out and talk to people about being depressed and sad and relationships, and all of those things went away when I listened to my own self. And in order to listen, I had that experience where it was around the same time after talking with Donna about this and my other folks that I grew up with on the beach. We had that experience all the time, sitting on the beach in silence. There's no noise. There's nothing but the rhythm of the sound of waves, and you just get quiet and you appreciate it. And you close your eyes and something happens to you. You float away. You float away in between the silence that's there, which, as I discovered later on, is that same thing that happens in the practice of meditation. It's not the aim. It's not the goal. If you practice the techniques, it will happen. And that's what happened for me. Kind of how I got it together, So I don't know if I directly answered that, but at least you can kind of keep me paced.
Okay, no, that was an incredible story. I loved it for many reasons. My own journey, I took psychology back in the day, and actually my professor was nice, but it was all about neuroses, and I was just so disappointed. I was like, can we do I thought it was about helping us to be happy. And I think I even said that to my professor when I ran into him at a cafe. I was like, I've had enough of neuroses. But,
oh, wow. Yeah.
I was like, can we learn about how to get away from those neuroses? I have an eccentric family. Let's just put it that way. And they're lovable, but eccentric. And so in case they're listening, I know my cousins listen to this.
Yeah.
But I love how you describe that. And I love what you said to your professor, that whole scene just paints such a great picture.
And I did get a chance later in life in my profession to spend time with Kimmel, to tell him how much I appreciated him. And then he said, "Yeah, I realized that you didn't have any more money in your scholarship to cover anything." He says, "But that, along with you being able to stand up and tell the world what you were thinking, along with taking courses, feeding your own intellect yourself," because it wasn't about the grade. It wasn't about, all of that kind of stuff. It was really all about your own curiosity. And he said, "Man, when you decided to stay, I was the first person in the committee, in the department to say, let's do what we need to do to keep him here."
That's awesome. What a testament. Yeah, that's really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I love what you said about the different disciplines not communicating, because that's why I fell in love with gerontology, because I love aging and the study of aging, but also the way that discipline, that subject, it brings everything together. So psychology, sociology, medicine. So that's also why I loved it, because I love to connect all the dots, and I'm curious like you. So I really love that you bring that to the table. And I know we want to talk about meditation today, because You have so much experience. I know as a meditator yourself and helping other people. Tell us how you got started meditating, and yeah, let's just start there. So
Well,
many questions.
Yeah, I'll go back, but real fast. The thought about meditation occurred in 1968. Okay,
Mhm.
it occurred in April, in May, really. In April of 1968, Dr. King was murdered, and I'm a Black man. You know, the media that came into the house, the magazine was something called Ebony Magazine. So the May issue of Ebony Magazine talked about Dr. King's life, and in the middle of that issue, there was an article by a brown-skinned man from India, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and he posed a question: can meditation solve our race problems? And I read it and I thought about it. I'm 13 years of age at that time, thinking about this thing. This is the first time I've seen meditation and not linked to prayer. Okay, you know, I'm educated as a Baptist. We've got ministers in my family, you know, that kind of thing. All around me, there's churches. And then there's this article. And there were people in this little article, this little piece. There are pictures of Black people in their living rooms, sitting, not with their legs crossed or doing something weird. They were just sitting there with their eyes closed, doing transcendental meditation. And wow, did that kind of do something. And of course, when I was out walking with my community of people on the beach, we started talking about this stuff, you know, at the age all through high school and that kind of thing. And we, you know, this transcendental state, is it like what we get when we're hanging out on the beach in silence? Okay. So then I graduate, go out into the world, go to start college and that kind of thing. And somewhere in my sophomore year, there is a brown-skinned man from India at my university to give a talk about the science of creative intelligence. And I went to the talk with one of my roommates, and when that auditorium of 1,000 people or so people started, when he stood up and he says, I'm a physicist. My training was in physics and mathematics. And I'm here to talk about this practice called transcendental meditation. I listened. He said the impact on you could be, in a very short time, the impact on your grades, how you study, how you learn. So he was talking my language, you know, on your grades, how you learn. And then he said, wouldn't it be nice if there was an effortless way that you can do all that stuff? And I went, effortless? And I thought about that word, effortless. He says, think about it. You've been in an exam and you're racking your mind to get the answer. You can almost touch it, but it's just not coming out of the pencil. And he says, it's amazing how when you leave it, the racking, the working your brain so hard alone, the answer comes out of nowhere. He says, transcendental meditation, one of the results that you will have is those answers will always be at your access. They're in the deeper recesses of your mind, your brain. Wouldn't it be nice? And I go, yes, I want some of that. And so I started practicing, and in time, I gave up taking notes in class. I had very demanding classes, and I got accused of cheating a few times because the classes were very, very demanding, but I'm taking no notes. But I did take notes after class. I was becoming more settled. And so after class, I would go, what I know, what I learned, you know, what do I need to do to apply this? You know, is there anything else that I need to do to read about, to know more about this? And that's just the way that I took notes. And for one professor of a neuropsychology course, which was by then an advanced course, course with only 20 people in it. He was just curious about how could I be making A's all the time and I didn't take notes in class. And I said, let me show you my notes, man. Phew. And of course he said, you need an advisor, and I volunteered to be it for you. So that's how it started. And then I continued to do my practice daily, and I have been all of these years. There's a morning practice and there's an evening practice. So if you have pointed questions, why don't we go there, focus questions that you have, or I can tell you what transcendental meditation is and what it is not. It is not nothing about religion. Got it? It's not about concentration. It's not even about focus. I tell people I was given a mantra, a little sound that has no meaning. But I was trained with my teacher it's quiet in 4 different sessions with my teacher. 4 times was taught how to use the mantra, and all the ins and out of what to do with it and when it goes away. And so the word it sounds like a contradiction. You focus on it, but you don't focus on it. And it will go away and it takes you into silence. There is the brain, we can't turn it off. It's like a refrigerator motor. We want it on all the time, if you know what I mean. And the brain is always on. So we can never get it quiet unless we give it a little something to do. So we give it a little something to do, which actually has to do with nothing, complete nothing. And it's a little sound that we're taught to just make, and that sound eventually goes away. Sometimes it goes away for a long time. Sometimes it's only just a minute. But in between all of the noise and the chatter, there is the deepest rest, the deepest peace, the deepest contentment that I can experience. Okay. It's not out here. It's really deep inside, in between all of that. So the mantra is a device for getting into that little space. And so as the body rests, the brain rests a little bit more. The more the brain is at ease, the more the body is at ease. The more the body and the brain are at ease, the brain then is capable of doing what it naturally wants to do. It's got 1,000 thermostats inside that it really wants to keep in balance. So the brain does then what it needs to do, rather than dealing with your stress or something you're worried about or sad about or whatever, or something that you're contemplating or wanting to do and planning. It says, okay, fine. Finally, a little place where all the healing can occur. So it's not about the word. It's not about words. It's not about manifesting anything. It's natural. It's going to happen by itself if you allow it to happen. So it's very natural. It's not about biofeedback. It's not about religion. It's not about forcing anything. And really, technically, isn't really about the mantra either. So that's what practice of transcendental meditation is all about. Is there scientific evidence for the results on aging? Old meditators like me who I just turned 68 as of yesterday.
Happy
Old
birthday.
meditators like me, as a person who was a buddy I was just talking with, he says, are you on any medications? I go, nope. He says, what about cholesterol? I go, I don't worry about that stuff. What about your blood pressure? It's okay. What about weight? What about this? What about that? What about your bones? What about all this eyesight? And I said, well, I'm at the minus 14 phase, that I'm about 14 years biologically younger than my actual age in terms of all of those markers. So you look at those measurements, I'm like someone who's at least, and sometimes more than that. As my eye doctor says, He says, I don't know why you want to keep coming in here saying, check my eyes. What are we checking your eyes for? You see fine, you know. He says, I'm the person year after year getting new glasses and that kind of thing. And I have a pair of glasses, you know, that I keep in there. Occasionally, I don't know where they are. I might wear them down the road or something. But, you know, that's life, you know. Yes, meditators, transcendental meditators, I can't say about other kind of meditators. Transcendent people who practice transcendental meditation spontaneously change their diets, spontaneously change what you think, how they think about, how we think about jobs and careers and in our relationship. It's a spontaneous thing. It just happens automatically. You're more deeply in rest. You're more deeply in peace. You're using, as Maharishi would says, you're using both sides of your brain now. Both sides of the brain are really on all the time. So you're more creative in what you do in your pursuits, whatever those pursuits might be. Okay. So, you know, am I talking out of, I'm talking from science, you know, and biologically, is there anything to show, any data to show that people who practice this technique live longer? Well, the one project I was consulting on, everybody was 65 and older, and they had severe hypertension. The West Oakland project, West Oakland. And they came in, and there was the usual stuff the doctors say to their patients: lose weight, watch your salt. There is the folks who were taught how to relax. And then there was the meditators. After 3 years, the folks who were meditating, 100% of them were still living. In the 2 years, majority, 90-something% were still living. Got it? Bottom line, life and death. But the blood pressures had normalized in the meditators. That's just one of like a few hundred studies now looking at reductions in cholesterol. And then there's the great Blue Cross and Blue Shield study that looks at the reduction in hospital admissions for every kind of reason you can imagine. The meditators were less likely to come into a hospital for different kinds of problems. So there's evidence there, a lot of evidence, you know, backing up the impact of transcendental meditation on health, longevity.
Where can we learn it? Where can our listeners get information on how to learn this form of meditation? Because there's so many meditation modalities or ways to meditate, and it's confusing in even just picking a meditation form.
Yeah. Well, you'll get a person who's been certified to be a teacher. So just go to tm.org and look for an organization just there, and there there's no secrets. You're looking for a meditation teacher, you'll get a person who's certified, not somebody who's been certified last week necessarily. You hear what I'm saying? People who've been meditating for a long time. There is then a course that people will sign up to. And it's an introductory course, a few lectures. And then if a person decides that they want to do it, then the instructor will meet with them individually and pair them with a mantra, their sound, and then for 4 sessions, teach them how to use that sound. So replication, duplication, exact, concrete, sequential steps is what the individual will go through with their teacher. And so that's not there for a lot of these other methodologies. So I don't know what people are saying, doing when they say, I meditate. I don't know what they really are doing. Okay, so it's not concentration. It's not about trying to figure out, making your mind go blank. It's none of those kind of things. It's a very scientific approach to really going deep and having some deep silence. Body becomes silent, the brain becomes silent, and everything just fits the way it needs to fit. And the refrigerator motor keeps going, if you know what I mean, a little bit longer. So that's what goes on. Other questions? I know we're getting kind of close.
Yeah, I think, do you have any questions, Karen? I just keep
Well-
thinking, she's got a question.
Well,
Go
you
for
know, as I'm listening to you, Dr. Ernest, one of the things that I just have finished, I was taking a personal intelligence class, and in the personal intelligence class, we're taught to, connect with ourselves, but we're not supposed to overthink it. It's almost like what you're talking about, that you can sit in a chair in your living room, you can go out to the beach, any of those places, but you need to feel from the inside out. And for the first 2 weeks, I worked hard at that. It was like, oh, I got to do this. I got to do this. And I got frustrated. And I went back to the person who's teaching the course, and she said, stop trying, let it happen. And it's interesting how that has changed me over the last couple of weeks. If I start a project and I start to really get upset about it because it's not going right, I'm now ready to just let it go.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, I may find 5, 10, couple hours later that, hey, I know the answer to that. And I can just simply go back to it. So I understand what you're talking about. I'm probably not doing it in the same manner that you do it, but I think we all can make the changes that can make us healthier.
Oh, they're so easy, and so one of the questions that comes up with a new student is, well, I'm doing my mantra. I'm just doing my mantra. I'm so focused on it. And the teacher will say, just don't focus on it so much. Just let it go.
Yeah.
Just let it be there, and it will be okay. Take all of you out of this. It's, if we really, I'll pose a question. If we really are made in the image of God, hello, that's it. Done deal. There's nothing else to say. There's nothing else to say. There's nothing else to say except to understand what that really means. Wow, that's a profound meaning, made in the image of the creator. Wow, having all that the creator gave. Wow, there's nothing else to do except enjoy the process of living out here and
Absolutely.
accepting that, just letting it go, letting all this other stuff go and enjoy the peace of being a son and a daughter of God.
I love
That's it. Yeah.
how that ties in with the stories you told,
Mm.
especially about not taking notes. Like that in of itself is mind blowing. And I also want young people to listen to this. My son, young people have so much pressure on them. I don't know. Well, that's a whole nother can of worms,
Mhm.
but it seems like, back in the day, the pressure didn't seem as much. And now it's like, maybe more people are going to college, more people are striving. But the important thing is what you demonstrated and the stories you told and how you demonstrated, like, you didn't even take notes. That image of God, it's like, it's in your brain, it's coming to you. You don't have to freak out. Like, that is so powerful, and how that could apply to so many different situations where most of us are going through our day and we're like, I can't find that, or kind of overthinking and becoming overly emotional. So I really love those stories that illustrated your point. And also the other one I was going to touch upon or remind everyone of is walking along the beach, because that rhythm reminds me of the rhythm of the breath, the waves. When I teach my students, I do like a brief meditation where I just kind of get them more present. And I sometimes talk about the waves and allow people to imagine they're on a beach because of that same idea that you're just kind of feeling like there's waves nearby, as a way to get them to start to turn inward. And then we do some movement, some yoga poses and asanas. But I really enjoy all that you said. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your garden, because I know we talked a lot about
Oh, wow.
meditation.
Yeah.
I'd just love to hear how the garden fits in with this whole
With life. Well,
life, mind, body,
yeah,
medicine.
yeah. You know, there was a time in Black communities, probably in many communities all over the US, where people had a garden. You know, remember, grocery stores only came into presence in the early 50s. We didn't have a grocery store. There was a place where you can go get some goods and some supplies, but it didn't look like Walmart.
Right.
You know, and people went and got a bag of coffee, bag of beans, and some coffee and some whatever, you know, and that kind of thing. But everybody had access to something that was being grown. So for me, it was that was part of just happened to everybody. And I got an opportunity when I think it was ninth or 10th grade to be part of something called the Future Farmers of America with a teacher, Mr. Harrell, who lived in the community. And he was always talking about why you need to grow and do what you need to do and just never be dependent upon people for, just get the seeds and do what you need to do and have fun learning about life, what a seed. So there's so many talks that he would give to us about the power of a seed. If you think about one apple seed could feed the whole world. You kind of think, well, how could an apple seed do this? Well, to grow more apples and more of this and more of that, be healthy for the squirrels will love them. The birds will love them. It'll also support animals and, everything else. And the worms will love the apples when they fall into the ground. And then the ground will love the old apples that are drying in there because it becomes fertilizer for other plants, another kind of seed, maybe a corn plant or whatever. And that's the kind of talks Mr. Harrell would give us, And so that just stayed with me. So when I left school, to go into college, there was that little plant, that first little plant for a whole lot of people was the avocado seed. Remember the avocado plant?
Yeah.
You grew the avocado plant and then that extended to this other plant. I don't know if you can look around my space here, you'll see there's plants. I don't think there's anything edible. There's a couple edible herbs back here, but most of this is just decoration, but decoration with a purpose, because all these little leaves, these big leaves that we see are also working for me. They're helping with the air and keeping the air clean and bugs away and all these things. So they're working as well. So I continued with this. Somewhere in college, got connected to community gardening. Okay. And so, didn't have my own little balcony at the time. And, apartments was just apartments, come in, 4 walls, do your
Right.
thing, go study, that kind of stuff. But community garden was kind of cool to do. And so as I sprouted out of that into the world, as soon as I got a balcony, I had plants in pots, easy things to grow, tomato plant, pepper plant. And that's just continued with it. So the organic gardens, I started an organic garden in Michigan. And from there on, I've always had a space in the backyard, so what is it about it? It's really about keeping people connected to where food comes from. That's what it was doing for me, those talks with Mr. Harrell. Know where your food comes from. And in fact, early on, the discussion wasn't about organic. It was about make certain it was local, that you also knew where your food came from,
Right.
who was growing it. So, at the, and the when you had a community garden, you knew you're putting your own seeds and your buddies putting their seeds. And so it was like you knew each other. And then what normally happened with 8 people growing different produce, when it's all producing, you swap, you trade, just like it happened when
Wow. Oh, thank you. Okay.
Yeah. So we may have actually, as I said, early this morning, I got a message from a buddy from Canada who said, there might be sun issues with technology today, with some
Wow.
things coming and going that, so, um, but nevertheless, part two of that is,
The garden.
yeah, this is that year to not grow much, to let the soil rest. So this is the year that I've been focusing more on my compost bins, because as we get closer to the cold weather, I'll just put all of that nutritional good stuff into the soil and cover them up and get ready then for the next spring. So I'll have a small growing season, from probably end of September, most of October, and a part of November. And I'll just grow collards and broccoli and Swiss chard. That's it. And that's the end of everything. So for me, it's there's a whole lot of things that you can with the things that I've said that I've grown. You add a few things, melons and cantaloupes to the list. You could actually, if I was really into super canning, super canning, there'd be enough here for, years.
Yeah.
What it's not consumed. Let me say it a little differently. I share a lot with my neighbors and family and friends that are not here. So there's always 3 or 4 or 5 bags that I'm putting in for people to share with them, not to sell to them, but just to share with them. And I love it when I've got certain neighbors who a decade ago, they weren't growing anything, but now I got neighbors who are bringing me bags of things that I don't grow, like figs. You got one neighbor who has a fig tree now that's mature, and there's all these figs. I don't know what to do with all the figs, So, but I'll figure out how to cook them or do something with some of them. So it's a fun thing, and it keeps me connected to Mother Earth. So, what do I do in the garden? Well, when you're bending and you're moving and you're stretching and doing different things, it's like doing Tai Chi. It's like doing yoga. You know what I mean? You're bending and you're moving, and you're doing this, and you're, connecting with your breath, with movement, which is always there. If you're just more conscious of it, then you're actually doing a form of garden yoga or garden Tai Chi. So there's an exercise that you can get from the movements. Because I said every movement that we make, there's an inhalation and an exhalation of breath, which is life for us.
I love that. You've shared so much wisdom, and I know we didn't even get into many of the topics like emotions and health. So we'll have to have you back on again.
Part 1. We just did part 1.
Part 1. We planted some seeds, everyone.
There you go.
And they're going to keep growing. So I hope that our listeners can look up tm.org. I'm definitely going to look into it. I've meditated for years, but done different techniques. And I'm really intrigued by TM as well. Transcendental meditation. So check it out.
When you're there at TM, there's a TM Daily. And on the TM Daily, there's a link to join a group. And most mornings, our leader, Bob Roth, there are, throughout the day, there might be 5,000 people meditating the same meditation every morning, every afternoon, and every evening. And there's beauty in the number. There's something magical when things become in sync. It's like when you're starting the car, this one cylinder is doing its thing, and another there's gas, but then there's not no oil, and then there's not oxygen, and then when things get in sync, boy, it's smooth. And that's what happens when a lot of people do the same thing at the same time. Doesn't matter if we're not together. At least we believe that. when we're together doing it, the impact on people around in the environment it's there. And there are actually research looking at that. When a group of people who come together for a long period of time to do the same meditation, to do transcendental meditation, the impact on violence is about 21%. You know, the impact on well-being of people in the community. And these, and when you're there, when you're in those kind of settings, we're not out saying to the people, you need to be cool and chill out. There's none of that going on. People just do their thing, practice, and the environment becomes what? More in sync with happiness and peace and compassion.
That's
by itself.
wonderful.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, that's what we need more of.
Definitely.
Well, this was excellent today, and I look forward to having you back, Dr. Ernest, because you just touched the iceberg.
Yes. And that's a way to think about it. This is just touching the tip of so much depth. You know, there's so much that we can all learn, you know, and, you know, it's fun. It's fun, and it's fun to share.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We will see you all soon. Take care,
Well,
everybody.
that's peace and blessings.